Poštovane dame i gospodo, uvaženi panelisti, veliko mi je zadovoljstvo što mogu da vam se obratim i predstavim online konferenciju foruma Šum Art pod ovogodišnjim sloganom Novi hrabri svet. Online konferencije su uvod u dvodnevni interdisciplinarni forum eksperata, mladih istraživača i vizuelnih umetnika Šum Art, koji je planiran za novembar 2023. godine. Forum je mesto na kome se razmenjuju ideje i iskustva sa ciljem podsticanja intenzivnijeg angažovanja mladih ljudi u oblasti kulture i umetnosti. Ono što je više nego evidentno jeste da popularna kultura danas predstavlja globalni fenomen koji konzumira veliki broj ljudi. Međutim, popularna kultura je od svog nastanka sa pojavama prvih medijskih industrije pa sve do danas prošla kroz tranziciju. U svojim počecima ona je bila isključivo industrijski proizvedena, da bi nakon pada cena tehnologije, kompjuterizacije, interneta, a pojavljivanjem raznih platformi za objavljivanje sadržaja, a sada i programa, omogućili su razvoj takozvani uradi sam popularne kulture. Popularna kultura je i danas industrijski proizvedena i namenjena je za tržište i za proizvodnju. Na taj način kultura određuje šta i kako mislimo, osjećamo i kako živimo, jer pruža obrazac za razumevanje šta treba shvatiti kao smisao, kako se smisao konstruiše i za koga u čije ime artikuliše. Sa pojavom hiperprodukcije kulturnih sadržaja postavilo se pitanje slobode. Biti slobodan znači imati svu moć. Biti slobodan znači imati mogućnosti izbora. Međutim, biti apsolutno slobodan znači imati i istinsku odgovornost. Da li smo zaista slobodni u svojim izborima i jesmo li odgovorni, samokritični pri proizvodnji kulturnih sadržaja? Kako koristimo ovo svoje pravo? Samo su neka od pitanja kojima treba da se bavi stručna javnost. Također treba istaći da funkcije koje kultura vrši u različitim formama neophodne su za očovečenje čoveka. Tako imamo kategorije idealna kultura, ono što ljudi kažu i treba da rade, i stvarna kultura, to je ono što zapravo rade. Upravo na toj tankoj liniji između idealnog i stvarnog javlja se plodno tlo za stvaranje tabua, koje propisuje društvo, religija, nacionalnost i druge interesne grupe. Lako ih uočavamo, a ponekad i sami traže pažnju. A većina ih je ili nejasna po formi, ili jasna po sadržaju, ili obrnuto. U svakom slučaju, jasne su i nejasne u nekoj entropijskoj ravnoteži. Da li savremeno društvo koje je dobro zagazilo u 21. vek još uvek ima teme o kojima ćuti ili nas je sve prisutna često nametnuta, sada već dobro svima poznata Vog kultura, u čijoj je osnovi politička korektnost umesto da osvešćuje i budi, upravo polarizovala? Da li kultura sme da poznaje granice, tabuje ili duh začaurenosti, odnosno palanaštva, ili je dominantni sve prisutni diskurs takozvanog kulturnog establishmenta koji je većinski napravio konsenzus da se traži kultura koja ne govori o vrednostima, nego se svodi na visokoparnu zabavu za New Age frakove i krinoline, izgubivši tako svoja inherentna svojstva i prepustila se uživanju PR kulturi koja operiše ciframa i tako od same sebe je napravila neprikosnoveni tabu. O fenomenu kulture i tabua u 21. veku razgovaramo sa našim večerašnjim panelistima. Prvo bih predstavila dame, a ne po redu izlaganja. To su dr. Julija Alizade, istoričar umetnosti, PR i umetnica iz Istanbula, Turska. Gospođice Smiljka Čabraja, istoričarka umetnosti, gospođice Nataša Tapić, istoričarka umetnosti, profesor dr. Oliver Tomić, istoričar umetnosti i dr. Nenad Perić, redovni profesor nauka i redovni profesor umetnosti. Sve prethodne online konferencije Šum Arta kao interdisciplinarni forum izazove iz savremenog trenutka, u okviru koga je bio i okrugli sto biti umetnica danas, vreme promena, možete pratiti na našem YouTube kanalu. Osnovni cilj foruma jeste davanje doprinosa istraživanju različitih aspekata interakcije između umetničke teorije i praksi, na taj način promovisanje i unapređenje dijaloga mladih ljudi i šire. Krajnji rezultat foruma jeste kritički razgovor o mogućnostima i izazovima epohe, ali i preispitivanje novih pristupa i viđenja umetničke teorije i prakse. Prošlogodišnji forum, a i zbornik radova koje smo uspešno objavili su to upravo opravdali. Now I will make my introductory speech in English. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists, it is my great pleasure and honor to address you and present the online conference Schumann Forum under this year's slogan, Brave New World. The online conferences are introductions to two-day interdisciplinary forum of experts, young researchers, and visual artists Schumart planned for November 2023. A forum is place for exchanging ideas and experiences to encourage more intensive engagement of young people in culture and art. It is more than evident that popular culture today represents a global phenomenon that is consumed by the numerous people. However, popular culture has gone through transitions in its inception with the emergence of the first media industries until today. In its beginnings, it was exclusively industrially produced, so the drop in the price of technology, computerization, the internet, and the appearance of the various platforms for publishing content, and now IE programs, allowed the development of so-called DEI popular culture. The aim of popular culture is to be placed for market and consumption. In this way, culture determines what and how we think, feel, and how we live, because it provides a pattern for understanding what should be understood as meaning, how meaning is constructed, and how articulated, and for whom, for whose behalf. With appearance of hyperproduction of cultural content, the question of freedom arose. To be free is to have all the power. To be free is to be able to choose. However, to be free is to have a true responsibility. Are we free in our choices? And are we responsible and self-critical when producing a cultural content? How do we use this right of ours? These are just some issues that should be dealt by the professional public. It should be pointed out that the functions performed by the culture in different forms are necessary for the humanization of man, and thus we have the categories such as ideal culture, what people say should do, and the real culture, what people exactly do. It is on the thin line between the ideal culture and reality. There is a fertile ground for creation of taboos prescribed by society, religion, nationality, and other interest groups. We notice them exactly, and sometimes they demand our attention, and most of them are either vague in form and clear in content, or vice versa. In any case, they are clear and vague in some entropy balance. Does modern society, which is well into the 21st century, still have topics about which it is silent, or it all present and often impose a woke culture which is based on political correctness instead of enlightening us and awakening us, polarize us? Is culture allowed to know boundaries, taboos, and the spirit of cocooning? Or is the dominant, ever-present discourse of so-called cultural establishment, which has made a majority consensus that we are looking for a culture that does not talk about real values, but carries a high-class party for new age tailcoats and crinolines, thus losing its inherent values and indulge the enjoyment of PR culture, which operates with numbers and make itself inventable taboo. We talk about the phenomenon of culture and taboos in 21st century with our panelists. I should introduce the ladies first, not in the order of presentation. Dr. Julia Alizadeh, art historian and educator and PR specialist from Istanbul, Turkey. Mrs. Mirke Čabraja, art historian. Mrs. Nataša Tapić, art historian. Professor Dr. Oliver Tomić, art historian, and Dr. Nenad Perić, regular professor of science and regular professor of art. All previous online conferences, as well as interdisciplinary forum challenges of the contemporary momentum, which includes the roundtable Being an Artist Today, Time of Change, can be viewed on our YouTube channel. The main goal of our forum is to contribute to the research of various aspects of the interaction between artistic theory and practice, and thus promote and improve the dialogue of young people. The result of the forum is critical conversation about the opportunities and challenges of the era, as well as the review and new approaches and visions of artistic theory and practice. The last year forum and our proceeding justify it. Now I would like to ask our Professor Oliver Tomić to start his presentation. Profesora ćemo na srpskom ili na engleskom, kako je vama lakše? I said you to speak in Serbian, never mind. Later on we will translate it in English. When we have
ja sam vas pitao bio, ali vi ste rekli srpski, pa mislim
ali kao što vidite sad malo više, nema veze. We will speak in Serbian, later on we will.
I can also try to translate simultaneously what I prepared to say, so it'll be more spontaneous in that way, perhaps.
Okay.
If you agree, I'll try it anyway.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
I'll try it. I must be able to share my screen. No. You that's your screen. You must give me. I must become a host. You must transfer me to become a host of the meeting. Then I'll give you your title of the host back afterwards. Okay, now we're talking. Okay, as by far the eldest here in the conference, I'll try to make an introduction about this notion of taboo, which is universally accepted and very actual, although local in origin, from Polynesian island of Tonga in 1771, and first described by the English seaman Captain James Cook. But now it's a very, very broad and actual topic, and so I'll give you some examples from art history, how people dealt with some of the taboos, being aware of them or not. For example, it's not only a historical, it's even prehistorical phenomenon. When we examined the cave paintings of Paleolithic art, we can see that the animal world was depicted pretty much realistically, although with some stylizations due to the modest means of painting. And on the other hand, we have a taboo of representing the human figure in a realistic way. Why was so, we can only guess, but perhaps those woolly rhinos, mammoths, cave lions, cave bears, etc., were conceived generically as only members of a species. And on the other hand, the human being is always a concrete person, so it can resemble someone concrete, and they wanted to avoid that for not doubling the personality. We have this taboo of taking photos of people even today in some parts of the world, because they are afraid of losing their souls if you take their photos. So that was one of the first taboo. Then we have another taboo, for example, from the Greek art, taboo of female nude, which lasted for more than 2 centuries. We know that the culture of the naked body of man were very familiar in Greek, in this ancient Greece, not only during the war, when men wore only some parts of the armor, and on the gymnastic competitions, nothing. But women, known as kore, so the girls, were always clad from head to toe, and only in 4th century, the famous sculptor Praxiteles showed this nude Aphrodite of Cnidos, with an excuse that she was born in the waters of the ocean. So the same explanation could have been given by Botticelli after. Then in Christian art, we had only some taboos. Very interesting that the cross is the main symbol of Christianity. But on the other hand, in the 1st century, after the Edict of Milan in 313, we have no representation of crucifixion. Why? We can only guess, but it was some kind of a taboo. We can see in a sarcophagus from the 4th century, and below an ivory from the British Museum of 420, when perhaps the earliest representation of the crucifixion, where Christ is more like this universal man of Leonardo da Vinci, without suffering. So even this suffering was a kind of taboo afterwards. Why was it so? We cannot know exactly, but perhaps it was a little bit inconvenient for God to be shown as dying for the first Roman Christian emperors, Constantine the Great and the others. Also, there was a taboo of representation of the Book of Revelation, because the Book of Revelation was lately introduced, in 4th century in the corpus of Holy Scripture, and moreover, it was never the text from the Revelation of St. John was never introduced as a part of a liturgy, and never used in any church service. So although in the West there were some episodes shown in the art, and finally in time of Albrecht Dürer, everything was put into his engravings. Only at the end of the 15th, beginning of 16th century in Russia, we have the first complete representations of the Book of Revelation. Why was it so? Why was it a taboo to show it? Perhaps because of those fantastic images that can bring the imagination to some unknown and undeserved paths, and so without participation in liturgy, it had no place in church art. Then we have another interesting taboo that was broken by the end of the Middle Ages on the West. In Middle Ages, there were some portrait existed, but it was the portrait of the founders of a church, kind of fresco paintings or icon paintings. We have the man giving the church to a god or a particular saint, etc. But all the other images were prescribed. They were sacred art, and repeated the models that were already prescribed. The idea that a living person could serve as a model to a saint was completely inconceivable. It was some kind of a taboo. But between 1360 and 1365, the Czech painter Theodoricus on the court of the Emperor Charles IV in Prague, or in Karlstein near Prague, executed many of those icons, so-called icons, and we have even some of his drawings. On the left, we can see Saint Peter, Apostle Peter from Sopoceni, from the end of the 13th century, which is faithful to the already established model. And on the other hand, we have this drawing, and we can even imagine the master Theodoric climbing the hill towards the castle to paint those paintings in the chapel of St. Cross, and then he stumbles upon a man who resembles St. Peter with the axe on his shoulder, and then he said, "Stop! Let me make a sketch." And then you can see that there is something behind this portrait, so a living person. But we can be sure that it was the case here, where when comparing with the Byzantine or traditional icon type of Virgin Mary breastfeeding, we know here that for Jean Fouquet in 1450, it was Agnès Sorel, the most beautiful woman in France and lover of a king of France, that served as a model for Virgin Mary. So it was a big taboo of that time. If we examine some other cultures in Islam, you know that figural painting was not allowed in principle, although the Iranians or Persians didn't care much for this ban, because they already had a 1,000-year pre-Islamic figural art. So they even depicted, we see here a miniature painting from the 16th century, where you can see even the Prophet Muhammad on his wise horse Burak, but the only taboo was the face of the Prophet. So even in Iranian art, there was some kind of a taboo. The sacred space can also be a taboo, and the interesting case happened in 1793 during the French Revolution, when many of the churches were attacked, almost destroyed, pillaged, and in Notre Dame, in the main nave, we have some kind of a first performance or even happening when this mound was put inside the church, and on this mound, Madame Moreau climbed up to represent the personification of nature and reason. So it was some kind of a how can I say, sacrilege, but also some kind of a breaking of a taboo of sacred space. But if we go to the more modern epoch, I would mention the case of Edouard Manet, who was not impressionist painter himself, but his definition of impression was crucial for the group of his admirers and disciples. And but why is he also important? Because of the provocation he made with this famous painting of 1863, Breakfast of the Grass, where he put a naked woman, or two naked women, but one is front of the picture, with two fully clothed men. It was not a scandal as such, because we know that he always made some dialogue with older paintings and art, and we can see in Giorgione's painting the same case, but it was not a provocation, because this is a personification of water, of air, of earth, and fire. So for personifications of the elements, harmoniously playing and then creating the beauty of the visible universe. Whilst in the painting, on the painting of Manet, it is a pure provocation for the society. And what is interesting here, that we have some kind of connection between the provocation and breaking of some kind of taboo. So after Manet, most of the taboos were broken intentionally, while we can see that they were broken more spontaneously in previous periods. In some way, we can also treat abstract painting as a breaking of some kind of unwritten taboo, because it was inconceivable that the picture doesn't represent anything. But Larionov, Malevich, Mondrian, Kandinsky, Delaunay, these were the first who created the so-called abstract paintings. Of course, they thought their pictures are representing something, but nevertheless, it was a very important step and breaking of some kind of taboo, because even Mondrian said, I don't understand why Picasso stopped at the door and never crossed the line. And so they intentionally crossed this line. Then we have a variety of modern currents and movements and concepts. When we think of William Morris and arts and crafts movement, or Wiener Werkstätte, or so of Klimt, Moser, and Hoffmann, we can see that the idea was to fight the products of industry and to create unique artworks for objects of daily use. Of course, this heroic endeavor didn't succeed, but the idea that the industrial product can become a piece of high art was inconceivable until Marcel Duchamp took this pissoir and made his famous fountain. So immediately you can transform anything into art, and to what length it can go shows the example of the slant step of the end of the 60s, where this New York elite idolized an unknown object of mysterious use, and even made some type of cult around this object. Finally, it was discovered a couple of years ago that it was meant to be used in the toilet. When you sit on a toilet, you can put your legs a little bit up. So, but this also introduced the absurdity, or the idea of absurd, which was, so the art must have some sense, must have some higher purpose or some practical use. So it was something that was completely normal. But now this taboo was also removed, and with the actions of, for example, Christo and his wife Jean-Claude, when they're wrapped up miles and miles of, in 1968, as I remember correctly, miles and miles of Australian coast. The Australian government paid for that. Hundreds of volunteers were introduced to help this this absurd project in some way, and even the absurdity can be dangerous, as this umbrella project of the same pair, Christo and Jean-Claude, where the wind blew and some of the umbrellas killed several people in this area. Finally, at the same time, in the 60s and beginning of 70s, the taboo of distinction between artwork and artist, which was completely something that you don't have to explain, that was also abolished, and the artist could and did become the material for the artwork and the artwork itself. And we have, of course, this first generation of body art artists, as like our Marina Abramovic, and the extreme examples like Wiener Aktionismus and Gerhard Schwarzkogler, who finally cut off his penis and dug out his eye and died. So it was some kind of a complete annihilation of the integrity of the artist. So this breaking of taboos continued, and of course always supported by the leftist intellectualism and liberalism, but became also an obsession. That's what I'm pointing at. That's the problem. That it became an obsession, like an obsession towards originality. You must be original, whatever that means. So it was not only the church and Christianity; they considered them already beaten. So the taboos that should be broken became all those things and values and institutions which originated from Christianity or some other traditional cultures: love, honor, beauty, family, patrimony, children, etc. So we have those examples of coprophily. Literally, we don't have to go back to Manzoni's Merde d'artista, artist's shit. In 1987, Andres Serrano pissed urinated on a crucifixion and made photos of that. Then we have Mark Queen with his shit paintings, so he literally painted them with the feces. Millie Brown vomits, so she made vomiting in colors. So that's the name of the project. Then we have this necrophily, plastination. So the exposing the real dead human bodies, And then this Slovenian artist, Maja Smrekar, a couple of years ago, she got a prize for her project. She induced lactation, then breastfed the puppy, and then finally she was inseminated by the sperm of a dog. So it was called bestiality, as I know. So why is it so? Something's going on with that. And finally, we have Ron Mook. For decades, he is demystifying or desecrating, as you like, the pregnancy, childbirth, even the children, etc. And only 50, 60 years ago, all those things were complete taboos. So what was left? That for the artwork to disappear altogether? That happened. The Italian artist Garau even sold the invisible or inexistent sculpture and painting. So I would conclude that it seems that it's very very confusing situation. It seems that in the contemporary art there is only one taboo that you should not touch, and that's the obligation to crush every taboo. So that's the only taboo. You understand? So no one's supposed to question that obligation, or it'll be labeled as retrograde, conservative, and I don't know, you know, everything that goes with it. So it will be my impression that it's a very interesting topic of this conference, because we are now in this absurd situation that the obligation to taboo is the only taboo that shouldn't be touched. Thank you for your time, and sorry for my English. I tried to do my best.
It was perfect. Your English was brilliant, brilliant. Thank you.
So you take Jelena, give. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. It was good.
I didn't prepare it in English, but
we didn't expect that we should speak in English only. Sorry, Professor. Can you give me hosting for now?
Yes,
Okay.
I give you make host.
Make
Okay.
a host. Okay. Now I'm
Yes.
asking the two of my dearest associate, Natasha Tapic and Smiljka Čabraja, to introduce their speech. You should speak in Serbian, I suppose, and later on or in English, whatever you like.
Well, I can continue in English. For now, I feel inspired, and you know, I think know each other, because I could anticipate what will be talked about at the conference. So I will use those same visual points that Professor already showed us. I didn't want to prepare a presentation because, as we saw from the previous speech, that we are very much free to interpret taboos, because there is taboo in everything since the beginnings of art and since the beginnings of mankind, in every possible way. So I didn't want to point out the taboos in visuals, as in topics, as in art concepts. I wanted to talk about our taboos in art, but in our perception of art, in our 21st perception of art, because I think that is also one taboo that is never talked about. And I will make some examples that I personally talked about with Smiljka, because we have that luxury to create our works from our long talks about art. So years ago, we asked ourselves, oh my God, what is forbidden today? Because when you think about taboo, we think about censorship. Because one taboo is, okay, we will break taboos and make new art, and that continues and continues and continues, and it goes to extremes. But the other way is, there is always somebody who will ban something, and we see that as a form of taboo. So we would ask ourselves, what is taboo now? And we thought, oh my God, nothing. There is no really like a body of someone who will say, this is good art, this is bad art, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. But it's in official way. But in unofficial way, whatever you do, make, say, or do in every way, somebody will get offended, and you will have a negative reaction in all. That is guaranteed. Whatever you do, you will be you will induce something negative, and there is always somebody to, you know, to say, oh my God, I feel bad about this. I'm offended, or maybe I'm angry about this, or you shouldn't do that, or you will have consequences about that. So I thought, furthermore, how do we see art today? And that is through the screen. I mean, also contemporary art. And Jelena always makes a mistake of not stating which kind of visual art she means when she makes conferences. So I'm free to interpret that as every visual art. And I can include cinematography right now, because I think that it is very much scrutinized, and it is under huge fist. So really under something. So if we see everything through screen, our spaces to see art, to do art, to promote our art, and to have news about art, and every piece of information is pretty much on portals and social media. So we see the place of social media as one kind of free space that you can curate what you ingest and curate what you put out. But the funniest thing that I saw on social media ever, and I think the most popular ones about Facebook and Instagram, is banning photos of, reproductions of classical artists. Rubens was #1. When you see nude by Rubens, it will be banned as inappropriate, as nudity, and it instantly deleted. So there is an algorithm that tells us, oh, you cannot post nudes online. It is against our policies. But again, I mean, it slips through, like, you know, like in everything else. But to me, that is funny. And I see, oh my God, it is censored, but it used to be censored in, I will not take any particular time in history, but nudes were generally censored. I mean, in a European moral way. That is seen something like a nude body as something that is very much sexual, that is against maybe Christianity, against some moral codes. Yes, but there is an art context. So if you translate that to Susanna and the Old Man from the Bible, or if you see Michelangelo's David, that is fine. Nobody ever had an issue with that, because that is a way to interpret art. So another example recently came to my mind, because the algorithm is still very much moral and you cannot post nudes. Pedro Moldovar wanted to promote his movie, Madres Paralelas, Parallel Mothers. So he promoted it with a poster of female breasts, one breast, that is dripping milk. And it was heavily banned from all media instantly by the algorithms. So unlike Rubens, Pedro Moldovar is alive. So he could defend himself. And he could say, oh, this is not inappropriate, this is not sexual, this is artistic freedom. So as crazy as this world is, the CEOs of social media platforms apologized to Pedro Moldovar, and they said that from now on, they will take into the consideration with their policy artistic context. So completely the same situation. You can post a nude, but if it's art. And my question to that is, well, who determines what is art and what is not art? And I'm so glad that we saw Marcel Duchamp a few minutes ago in his fountain, because he took a regular object, he took a urinal, and he said, this is art. So, oh my God, sorry. Who will say now what is art? Who determines what is art? So that is a question that Serbian art historians will know, was ist Kunst? And it seems that for 100 years, we're trying to establish was ist Kunst. So my question is also, when we're about thinking about what is art and what is artistic context and who determines what is and what is not, I wanted to target one specific phenomenon as a taboo. particularly in Serbia, and that is artificial intelligence. Because it is now a new terminology. We say generated art. And some people say it is art, some people say it is not art, because it came out as a joke. As I left to social media algorithms, I also left because I could make whatever I wanted by typing a few simple words. And I could see a new painting. For example, I wanted to see apples, but as if they were painted by Dali or some famous painter. And it was so funny to me. But there is a lot of potential in those programs for art historians to try to attribute something to in teaching. There are papers now that are studying artificial intelligence, but when it stopped being fun, it was last month in April. There was a contest in photography called, I think, Sony World Photography. And one photographer, Boris Eldatin, he won and he refused to take the prize. And he said, now I can tell you that my photo is only particularly my photo, but it is a artificially AI generated photo. I did some changes, small changes. I polished it to make it look more like a great piece of art, a great piece of photography. But in its basis, it is generated by artificial intelligence. And he won that big prize. So again, we're not talking enough about that because it can be fun, it can be really useful, and it has its purposes. But if there is a whole area that you cannot really determine, whole area of art that you cannot really determine if that is artificially generated or that is really made by humans, we are in a huge problem, and we should talk about that more. I think globally it is talked about, but in Serbia, I think people, some people do not see the potential, and maybe they're like me, naive, and they're like, oh, this is so funny, and it stays on that level. You can have fun with that, and that is enough. And people globally are afraid of artificial intelligence. And I don't mean artists specifically. I see a lot of people in IT and similar positions that really, you know, they are afraid for their positions. And will my job will be there in 5 years? Will that be done by ChatGPT or some similar generator? So I think I wanted to target artificial intelligence in art as a taboo, because I think it should be spoken about more. And I'm saying that because me personally, I want to see another opinion, because I also want to have a conversation and to see if that is a threat or maybe it is not. Maybe it is only on that. Okay, we can use that for learning and we can use that to have fun. But maybe some art branches like photography, digital artists, graphic designers, maybe they are threatened a little bit by that. And there is also ethics, because the algorithms and the generators are taking pieces to learn about that by real artists. I mean, and sometimes it is copyrighted and sometimes it's not. So there is also a huge gray area that should be legally also for artists to be determined and to be talked about and maybe taken care of in a legal way. So that is only my 5 minutes of questions, because I don't have any answers. I just want to point out some paradoxical situations in the perception of art in 21st century, because as we saw, every art from every time period is affected by this view, and this view is heavily distorted by some taboos. So I think Smilka will have her 5 cents of thoughts after me about similar topics, but I wanted to conclude that without conclusion. So I wanted to stay open, and I just asked some questions that and shared my thoughts about things that I think should be talked about. So Smilka, I think you are after me.
Yes, Milka, proceed.
Thank you, Natasha, and thank you, Elena, for letting me in again, because my Zoom went a bit crazy a few seconds ago. It's very interesting that we talk about these different kinds of taboos today, because like Natasha said, when we sat and talked about the art and taboos today, we were kind of like, so what are taboos today? And I think today taboos are defined by different smaller groups of society, which is kind of ironic in this moment when we are collectively connected via internet and via different types of technologies. It seems that still every smaller group has its own taboos. For example, the conservative groups consider some themes which are not taboos for the liberal groups, and vice versa. Also, when it comes to different pieces of feminist factions, some radical feminists consider some themes taboos which liberal feminists don't. So it is very hard to define taboos today, and I'm glad that we talked also about the film and literature today, because there are a few things that I wanted to talk about and maybe to ask some questions, because a few years ago, I think it was maybe during the pandemic, there was, for example, a big controversy surrounding Gone with the Wind, and someone said it was a piece of art which was promoting racism. For example, also when it comes to different literature pieces, some titles are being changed today from what they were in the past, like the titles from, for example, Agatha Christie, and these are all very, very important and very complex questions to answer. But as we also said today, we kind of prepared more questions than answers, hopefully to find some answers in the future. Also, when it comes to film, we know that in the past, in the times of old Hollywood movies, we had society had and popular culture has had certain codes which were prohibiting certain behaviors which were considered vulgar. Today we don't have anymore these kind of codes, I would say, but ironically these codes were leaving more room for the imagination, and today we can see way more than we can imagine. I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's still a very important topic to discuss. So those are our questions today. Natasha also talked about artificial intelligence and how is it, what are we experiencing as a taboo today? Also, there are still some groups which consider artificial intelligence, some consider it good, some consider it bad. So I hope these are the questions which we will bring up either in the discussion today or on some later conferences during our project.
Thank you, Smilka. We had one conference regarding artificial intelligence with our friends and co-workers from Greece, and we will continue. We agreed on some kind of roundtable. Professor Peric will talk about that maybe later, but you get the point. But every technology started at a state of art, so art is in each and every aspect of technology included, but behind every artificial intelligent creation is a living being. So we can discuss about that a lot. So now I would like our Julia from Istanbul to firstly, I will like ask you to unmute, and I will make you a host. Okay, and you can share. And you can share your presentation.
Hi, everybody. Do you hear me?
Yes, I make you. I make you a host.
Okay.
Okay, can you do it?
What should I do now?
Share screen.
Okay. Just a second. Do you see?
No.
I don't know. Neither I. No. I pressed to share the screen and chose my document.
No, we cannot see. Can we continue without presentation and later on you can send us?
Unfortunately not, because the presentation is important.
Okay.
I will try again.
Yes, okay. But you must open the speaker. We cannot hear you. Unmute. Can you unmute, Yulia? Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you very much. So now you see my presentation. Okay. It's okay now, yes. Okay, so let's start. At first, I would like to say that I'm happy to be invited to your forum. And I visited Belgrade 5 years ago for my business trip. And I greatly liked your city, people, architects, and I hope I will be able to come back again. I'm really interested with this theme of forum because now when we live in digital area, we can find everything, but we need to choose with more attention, because I'm not only artist, but also a PR consultant. I want to talk about how cultural taboos affect to artists, painters, PR strategy, but mostly to women artist painters. I want to start my presentation from checking position of women in law. Of course, we should say that in 1979, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women was opened for signature by United Nations. And as you see, many countries become a member of this convention. Then let's look to situation in Europe. The Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, better known as the Istanbul Convention was opened for signature in 2011 in Istanbul. But on 2021, Turkey announced that country is withdrawal from the convention, and the withdrawal has been criticized both domestically and internationally. So, of course, we are talking about women. I wondered, how many women artists, painters are there in Turkey? For example, for easy data, I looked to the Wikipedia, which is free encyclopedia, in which registration is available for all people in the world. And what we see just only 27 names. I wanted to compare with another countries. So, for example, Russia has 90 names, Serbia 26. Yeah, maybe not every woman artist painter was registered in the list, but it's a fact. As we see on this slide, even during the Renaissance, there were outstanding women artist painters who could compete with professional masters who graduated from the Academy of Art. But unfortunately, many of them worked secretly, signed with male names, and were not exhibited, and now their legacy has been lost. I decided to check more statistics, and there is a National Museum of Women in the Art in Washington, and they share some data on their website. Let's see to this slide and to these digitals. Of the 3,050 galleries in the Artsy database, 10% represent not a single woman artist, while only 8% represent more women than men. Almost half represent 25% or fewer women. The next, the DIA found that as women artists age, they earn progressively less than their male artist counterparts. Women artists aged 55, 64 earn only 66 cents for each $1 earned by men. Just 24% of the 27,000 artists shown at art fairs in 2018 were women. Art fair sales that year totaled $16.5 billion. There is a 47.6% discount for women's art at auction. So it's perhaps such statistics are due to cultural taboo. It actually doesn't matter in which country you are. Every society has its own characteristics and problems. It can be sensitive topics or passivity in the struggle for rights, or problems with position of women in the professional self-realization. Actually, a lot of taboo we have everywhere in the world. But I think that if you are an artist, you have a mission. You must always think about what you show to your contemporaries and about what you leave for future generation. As a professional, I need to say that I think that success for artists, not only for women, but also for all artists, is in the strategy. Your art and you need to be a personal brand. So your personal brand needs a personal PR. This is a special strategy which helps you to become better known and understood, manages your profile, and creating decisions open the right opportunities for you and prognoses future success and risks. Let's see to this slide, and now we can see that modern personal PR consists of website, social media, and of course you should use only suitable social media for your art. If you work with, for example, if you work with teenagers, maybe you don't need to choose something serious, choose some fun. But if you work with elder people, if your customers are a little bit elder, you need to choose another social media, but don't be in mute. Then catalog is very important for all artists and also for all researchers. You should have catalog, but at the same time, traditional media works. For example, newspapers, professional magazines, you have to do reportage in TV channels, and of course, real meetings is very important. Go to exhibitions, to fairs, meet with your fans, meet with your audience. It's important. There are 4 targets for personal art PR. These are initialization in your sphere, permanent contact with old buyers and viewers, advertising to find new viewers and buyers, attracting sponsors and finding financial resources, and each instrument works for target. For example, social media works for advertising, but exhibitions work for initialization. Everything should be a system, and all these words, all these methods should work together, because your viewer may become your potential buyer. And let's don't forget that viewer is a person who loves or doesn't love your works, but potential buyer is a person who may be your viewer, have a high potential in becoming a buyer of your artworks, and also he loves your artworks. And a buyer, just only buyer, is a person who wants to buy your artworks for own aims and sign a contract. Contract is very important. And to communicate with both them is your must do. You should be not only an artist, but also a star for your audience. You need to analyze market, keep in touch about all fairs, exhibitions, prices, trends, and local culture. On this stage, taboos and culture must be observed. For example, you cannot send nudity paintings to the East, but you can send it to the West, and it's normal. After, you should compose your viewer and your buyer. We name this as a persona. Just only these persons will be yours and will provide you with the fame and income. It's important. And of course, analyze your personal brand as an artist regularly. List your strengths, weakness, threats, opportunities. Artists will be able to stand on own feet just if you analyze all facts which influence to him. Do it every month, or I don't know, every 3 months, but do it regularly. And always keep your goals. I believe that no taboos, no historical facts can affect your success as much as your own knowledges. So I advise to develop yourself and your personal brand. And it's important for artists, painters, sculptors, for everybody. In case of taboos, artists should act as a professional. It doesn't matter actually, we are a woman or we are a man. We should be a professional at first. So it needs a PR strategy. And don't forget that some cultural taboos is a start for underground and aggressive behavior. But you as an artist should be a light side of this world. So it's all, that's all. Thank you for attention.
You must.
Mm-hmm. I must turn off my sharing, yeah?
Yes,
turn off your. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and make me a host. Can you do it?
Yes, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
It's very inspiring. Thank you very much.
Afterwards, we should speak during this.
Okay.
Professor Peric, can you conclude the official part of our? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
because I have some noise. I don't hear myself perfectly.
Test 1, test 2. Okay.
Okay.
Just, I will
Artificial
try to
intelligence.
Okay. I will try to be short because the main idea was like to put everything into 1 hour. And I'm very pleased with such, let's say, delightful exposés of our participants. I would just say one thing about this artificial intelligence conference. We will be performing something like October, November, maybe beginning of December. We haven't resolved that yet, but it will be upon artificial intelligence. I think that Natasha or Smeek were talking something about said something about visual arts in general. So this will be about arts in general, both visual arts, audio, and interactive media arts, etc. That was just one info I'm giving to all the participants, and you're also all welcome to participate either with something that you would like to share or present, or just to take participation in listening to a couple of very esteemed professors and artists we have already invited, and they have said yes to say yeah. And the second thing about this conference is that I think that we could be very pleased with the quality of everything that was said, and about the angles that we could hear during this 1 hour or more. And my conclusion is that we should continue with this, like make this an annual webinar, web conference, or maybe even conference in Belgrade. Julia has visited Belgrade, as you said, something like a couple of years ago, and I believe that maybe Julie would be interested also, and some other people that we could join in this idea. So I would just like to thank everybody once more for participating, and I would like to ask Jelena to make some, I don't know, circular mail so that we could all exchange the presentations and maybe some other ideas for the next conference that will be taking place.
Yes, I
so
will.
In Belgrade, not just in visual,
Okay.
in virtual space.
I will. Maybe, thank you, Professor. Maybe maybe we can open a brief discussion if somebody want to ask and to discuss on these topics, or we should stop recording and feel free to speak out.
Okay.
Okay.
No taboos, but
No
stop
taboos,
recording.
but stop recording. Is that okay? Is there anybody wants to ask something officially or unofficially? Unofficially. Okay. Now I will stop recording. Thank you everybody for participation, and I will.
I don't know that recording, stopping the record. I'd wanted to say something about being personally an artist and the personal spiritual psyche, and I think to turn off the recording at that point would sort of be.
No, I'm not turning the recording. Shall I?
I was just saying, I just think to talk about it after wouldn't put it in context. That was all. And then it's turning off the recording. I just wanted to say a little bit about personal insidious taboos.
I will stop recording. Is that okay? No? Yes.
No, I just thought it wasn't right to stop recording when that was the point.
Okay, yes, okay, you can speak right now.
I only wanted to, it's like questions really as well. But, you know, we asked like what being an artist today, what are the challenges of the modern movement? And, you know, one of the greatest challenges, I've just talked about one of the greatest challenges is this whole thing about AI, marketing, online presence. As an artist, you know, because my preoccupation is with the spiritual health of artists when, you know, what we call mental health, we pathologize mental health. And actually what we're talking about is the spiritual health of the artist and the ability to be free at the core of the self, of being an artist, a working artist, creating art. And we get preoccupied in this current climate with the mechanisms by which people see or hear us, when art for its own sake seems to be lost in there. And I think one of the most critical, insidious taboos is the idea that art is not valuable as a life state. It's not considered to be like the get a proper job syndrome. You know, I've been practicing as a creative practitioner all my life, you know, and all my life it's like, do you still do your singing thing? Do you still do your art thing? You know, so, and it's like, well, yes. Do you still do your banking thing? Do you still do your teaching thing? Of course, it is what I do. It is what I am. And that is a really difficult thing to express to people as a valuable thing, because it's not, I think, right across the board in every society, it's not considered to be valuable. But there's a class system thing goes on here. It's, you know, it's very prevalent in Britain. The idea that, you know, middle class art is valuable and anything else isn't. You know, that's what the punk movement's about. That's what the hip hop movement's about. You know, poetry, beats, music, dance and visual art together, coming, you know, intuitively from community, from the individual. That is quite frowned upon. You know, as you know, when you grow up, you're going to stop doing that nonsense and you'll do it properly. And one of the reactions I have is being, you know, somebody that came up with dyslexia, didn't even know I had dyslexia. and then, you know, created all sorts of systems with the sensory memory to cope with this sort of left brain world. Do you know what I mean? You come now and think that's just by chance created other ways of doing things. And when we were talking about marketing, you know, and, you know, you need to do this, you need to get your market here, you need to know that you're visible here. It just makes me go into a cold sweat, because as a musician, I've seen like through 40 years, you know, coming through like acid jazz, you know, coming through, starting sampling, starting to use modern technology. And as I said earlier, you know, people saying it's not real music though, is it? If you generate it with a computer, like one of our other contributors was saying, you know, of course, it's still an instrument. It's simply an instrument, you know, it's been by which. But what's happened with the internet is that's homogenized everything. And it's created this sea of homogenized work and borrowing, and, you know, what we used to call mashups are really reproductions from other art. And it's very difficult to see what you think is valuable art in there. Being good at marketing and being good at getting your stuff out there is not the same thing as producing valuable art. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's where there's almost like, oh, we want to say, of course, technology is creating art. Of course, it's creating new art. Not necessarily. You know, and the Taboo is saying not necessarily, you know, not necessarily a value, or having the argument. And I think especially this has been brought into sharp focus by the pandemic, because the pandemic created social constriction that was huge, especially in this country, because the whole freedom to speak out, to go on the streets, things like the freedom not to be out, you know, not to be inside, the freedom not to take on, you know, vaccines, the freedom to speak out against the methodology, everything was suppressed. And what that's done is created in its wake an inertia for artists right across the board who dare not. We've had our freedom of speech inextricably constrained, and the tiredness and the exhaustion of that has created an inertia with all artists, whoever you talk to, and the post-traumatic effect of not being able to express that freedom has hit everyone, you know. And I think the reason I'm saying this, I know we all know this, but I think we have to be so proactive in driving people into radical change, into radical art. I don't think it's enough to say this is how you market it, this is how you get seen. What do we want to be seen? What we want to give ourselves permission again to be breaking taboos. You know, it's that thing about, you know, in a way it's easy to say, you know, let a dog breastfeed you. Well, of course, I was going, wow, that's a taboo, you know. And I was talking the other night about, you know, when house bricks were an art piece in the Tate. Yeah. But to me, that's a bourgeois taboo break. It's not really about being dangerous, being politically dangerous in what you do. Like punk was politically dangerous in this country. You know, at the same time, we were fighting Thatcher's, which was essentially a police state here. Do you know what I mean? We were fighting for the right to the gay rights. We were watching our friends die of HIV because of all the taboos around how they changed taboos, made them, manipulated things so that, you know, people who were gay were the only people that got HIV, people who, and they didn't matter if they died. You know, I remember being there while we were throwing ourselves in front of buses and saying no. But now this constraint on young people, particularly young artists, there is this kind of exhaustion and not any idea of where to go with that. Not even generating anger, not even knowing what it's about. And so to me, it's about really shining a light on that with our art and being really concerned with the interior, with the raison d'etre of the individual artist, with the Buddhahood, with the Godhead, do you know what I mean? Whatever that, to be really concerned about finding what it is we need to say, and to basically take away the gagging that's happened. And it's been very slow and gentle. And the trouble with AI, I was listening to a Cambridge professor talking about existential threat, an AI yesterday. And he was saying, it's not really that I'm concerned that, the machines are going to take over the world and annihilate us. It's the insidious nature of a mistake cascading into a phenomena. And no better has that been demonstrated by the pandemic, by things, wrong decisions cascading into social change and social oppression. And so I'm putting that all in one place. I just wanted to say, though, I think this is so personal, and I think we've got to be really proactive in driving thoughts towards what is the personal requirement of an artist. What do we have an obligation to do now today? Where are those two taboos? Let's find them. Sometimes we don't even know they're sitting there. So that was, I'll shut up now. I could talk.
No, Jules, we talk a lot about that. Jules and I, we are very, very best friends, and we talk a lot about this situation in art in general, visual art in general, yeah. And we talk about how to improve, not to change, but the change always starts within us. And the thing, if nobody wants to talk, I will conclude the official part. Maybe we taboo. Maybe we taboo ourselves during this idiotic period of times in the last few years. We forget who we are. We forgot what we are doing, what is our purpose, and what is our aim here on the planet. And I think when we start to think openly and accept our freedom of choice, but also responsibility would come with this, doing this with choices, we can speak more proactively about breaking taboos. And I will stop recording. Thank you everybody for joining us this evening. And I hope that we will continue our conversation in another online panel.